In this video, you will learn about graphing compound inequalities and specifically compound and inequalities. Now, generally, compound inequalities are defined as an inequality joined by and or. And below are two examples. The first one is what we would consider an and inequality, which we'll talk about in this video, and the second one is considered an or inequality, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Now, a compound and inequality combines two different inequalities together. If I were to graph the first line, so x is greater than or equal to -3, since there is no line under the greater than, I put an open circle at -3, and my arrow points to the right, so I'm going to draw my line to the right. For the second one, it says x is less than or equal to 1. So since it's less than or equal to, it would be a closed circle, and because it's pointing to the left, my arrow is going to be to the left. Now, the solution for this inequality is the intersection of the two, so where they cross. In this case, they cross with, these are our two endpoints, so I have the open circle and the closed circle, and the intersection is this part that is red and green. So it would be this part of our graph right here. Now, if we want to graph this, rather than having to go through this every time, the way we see below is the way it's traditionally presented. What you would do is, we start that, it says -3 is less than x, so I would go to -3. Since it's just less than, it doesn't have the line underneath, it would be an open circle. My other number is less than or equal to 1, so since it's less than or equal to 1, I would have a closed circle at 1, and you're going to shade or graph the area that's between the two. The way of thinking of these is you want to think of it like it's between. You're shading the area that's between the two numbers. So in this example, if I wanted to graph, I first put a point at -4. Since it's just less than, it would be an open circle. Then I put another point at +4. Since it's less than or equal to, I put a closed circle. And then I draw my line or shade in between, since x is in the middle. For the next one, it's -3 is less than or equal to x, so I put a closed circle at -3. And then it's x is less than 1, so I put an open circle at 1, and you shade that area in between. Again, the x is in the middle, so you shade between. Now, in order to solve an inequality, you want to isolate the variable and repeat all operations to all three parts of the inequality. If we were to just focus on the center part of this inequality, if I wanted to solve to get t by itself, I have to get rid of this +4. Now, in order to do this, I would subtract 4. Now, whatever I do to the middle, I have to do to all three parts. So I subtract -4 from the 9 and from the 10. So like an equation where whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other, or an inequality where whatever you do to one side, you do to the other, with a compound and, whatever you do to the middle, you do to all three sections. Now, if I simplify, we'll have -13 is less than t is less than 6. Now, if I were to graph, if I had one point was at -13 and 6, I'd have an open circle at -13, an open circle at 6, and we shade that area in between the two. For the next example, our equation is -62 is less than or equal to 10p minus 2 is less than or equal to 98. Now, if I wanted to isolate this 10p minus 2, if I want to solve for p, you have to first get rid of this -2, just like we're solving an equation. So in order to do that, you would add 2 to all three sides of the equation. So that would give us -60 is less than or equal to 10p is less than or equal to 100. And then to get rid of the 10 in front of the p, because it's multiplying, we would divide all three sides by 10. -60 divided by 10 gives you -6 is less than or equal to p, and 100 divided by 10 gives you 10. So since it's negative 6 is less than or equal to p, I have a closed circle at negative 6. P is less than or equal to 10, so I have a closed circle at 10. And then you shade the area in between. In our last example, again, we want to get the x by itself, and whatever we do to one side, we do to all three sides. So to get rid of the plus 3, I would subtract 3 from each side. So that'll give us 1 is less than x, and 12 minus 3 gives us 9. Now if I were to graph, I'd have an open circle at 1, an open circle at 9, and shade the area in between.